Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private network for creative professionals across the globe. Together, we support you so you can create at your best, connect you with like-minded professionals, and therefore grow your creative business. If that sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more about joining our growing network of creative professionals, do feel free to reach out to us after the show. But this is On the Couch with Creatives. So, Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, today on the couch, we have Liz Drury, who is a freelance voiceover artist based in the UK. But of course, she has clients from all over the world. Her voice can be heard on radio, internet, and television commercials, guided audio tours of places of interest, telephone systems, corporate and explainer videos, e-learning modules, online courses. She's everywhere. She works for businesses, both big and small, local firms and multinational companies. She's won several awards for her work. So let's get her on the couch, Melanie. Hello, Liz. Welcome to On the Couch with Creatives.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me.
Well, let's kick off with the first thing that most people interested in following in your footsteps would want to be asked is, how do you get started?
So my background actually is not in voiceover at all. My background is in science. And I probably came the long route to voiceover. As a PhD student, my work was reported very widely in the press. And I did a lot of radio interviews. And I think that's kind of where the seed was sown, really. I remember sitting behind a microphone waiting to be interviewed on the radio and thinking, I'm really quite enjoying this. And so after I'd got my PhD, I got married, I moved to North Lincolnshire, which is where I currently live. And at that time, there was a local cable TV station not far from where I lived. And I started working there as a volunteer because I was new to the area. And I thought, what a great way to find out what's going on in the area. And eventually they took me on. And a couple of years later, I had my own program. And I did a bit of voiceover work as, you know, it's part of my job there. But I'd actually never had any training in it at that time. And I left there to have my children. And while I was off, the business got sold and there was no job for me to go back to. So then I had quite a big gap until I came back to voiceover again. And I came back to it whilst we were living in the USA. We were there temporarily for a couple of years with my husband's job. And so I had the opportunity to do some training because I wasn't working. So I trained in voiceover while we lived in the States, started my business out there and brought a whole new career back home with me. So probably not the most conventional route, I would say.
When you say training, did you take online courses? What did you actually do?
So I signed up with a company called Edge Studio, who are based in New York, but had a satellite studio in Washington, D.C., which was about 40 minutes from where we were living. And they did a mixture really of online training and in person. So I had one-to-one coaching in person with coaches who were based in the DC area and via Skype, as it was back then, with coaches who were based in New York. And then they also ran a whole load of online webinars teaching you about various aspects of the voiceover business. Not just voiceover, but aspects of running a business as well, which at the end of the day, we're all doing. And it was great. I trained with them for about 6 months and, learned all sorts to really kind of get my career off to a good start.
How different was it? Because obviously you did a bit of voiceover, as you say, in your day job, and then you went to learning it properly. Were you surprised at how much there was to learn? Because some people just think, oh, it's just talking into a microphone and maybe putting on a silly voice. What range of stuff is there to actually consider when you're learning voiceover?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I remember saying to one of my coaches, and he said, well, you've done a bit of this before, and I've listened to you, and you're sounding really good. What is it that you want to know? And I said, well, I don't know what I don't know. I'm sort of new to this industry really, and I don't know what I should know. And it's surprising how much there is to learn really, because every genre of voiceover is different. So the way you approach an audiobook is very different to the way you would approach a TV advert. And that's different to how you would voice and explain a video, which is different to how you would voice something for e-learning. So there's a lot of information to take in about how learning about your own voice really, and how to use it most effectively, how to emphasize certain words or phrases, how to bring out the important information for learners in case of e-learning and so on. And then there was also a huge learning curve for me in terms of recording and editing my audio, because that wasn't something that I'd ever done before. And that is something that voiceover artists now pretty much need to be able to do. Sort of 20 years ago, hardly anybody had a home studio. Voiceover artists would go into professional studios where there would be an audio engineer to do the recording and do the editing, and all they had to worry about was their vocal performance. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's pretty much a prerequisite that you have a home studio these days as a freelance voiceover artist, and more often than not, clients are expecting from you clean audio that's ready to drop into their projects. So you need to know not only how to record it, but how to edit it and take out any mistakes or any background noise, etc., etc. So that was a lot of new things to learn when I first started.
So you're obviously your own sound engineer as well as being a voiceover artist, and that's your sound booth behind you, correct?
It is, yes. That's my 4-foot square vocal booth there, which is like my padded cell where I sit and talk to myself.
So how do you get that all together? How do you actually put that in your home, and how expensive is it?
Well, they're not cheap. I mean, I was fortunate in that I found that for sale on eBay. A studio in London were not using it and advertised it on eBay. And I paid £1,000 for that. But to buy one new is more like £5,000 plus. But they come in pieces. So, when I actually bought that while we were still living in America, that was in London. And I needed it to be in my home, ready to put together when I got back from the States. And I had a friend at the time who had a big van. So I called him and said, could you do me a massive favour? Can you drive to the studio in London, pick up this booth, but just put it in my garage till I get home? And so the first weekend we were home after living in the States for 2.5 years was spent slotting that together so I could carry on working.
Are they easy to put together, or is it really hard? Because I would struggle, even though it's square, I probably would struggle.
Yeah, it wasn't difficult, but it needed 3 of us to do it because it's so heavy. It really is heavy. The door is massively thick. And the tricky bit was reaching up to put the top on. And I don't know if you can see, but there is a beam that runs across my room, and it just fits under that beam. So that was the trickiest part of it, really.
But a few.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd had my mother-in-law measure the room for me before I bought the thing, and I thought, I just hope that she's got this right.
So that's the physical booth, and then you have the microphones, the mixing desk, all the cords and wires and stuff like that. Did you have to get somebody in to set you up, or were you?
No, I sort of learned how to do that myself, and it's relatively simple. So what I have in there is I have my microphone, of course. I have a MacBook that doesn't have a fan in it because you can't have a computer with a fan somewhere where you need it to be really quiet. And then I have what's called an audio interface, which basically connects the computer and the microphone together. So I don't have a mixing desk. That's sort of not necessary just for doing voiceover. So it's quite small equipment really, and it's just plug it all together and fingers crossed it works.
Well, nowadays obviously mixing desks are all part of the software that you use.
Exactly, yeah, it's all done electronically now. You don't need to have a physical mixing desk, which is how it's much easier now to have a home studio, whereas sort of 20-30 years ago the equipment was huge. It wasn't really something that you could have in your home very easily.
Yeah. And do you find that makes it more difficult to get work in a way because it's so much more accessible and there are a lot more people being able to have, high quality studios in their homes now?
Yeah, there's definitely, the marketplace is quite crowded now, and especially, of course, since COVID, because before that time, I did still know people based in London who didn't have a home studio because they didn't need to. They could just go to a studio if they needed to record something. And then the pandemic happened and all the studios closed down. And suddenly those people were scrabbling to get set up at home. And of course, so many people, that's my dog, so many people were out of work, because their employment, they got made redundant or they were furloughed. And people thought, oh, do you know what, I'm a bit disillusioned with my job. Maybe I'll look for something else. What can I do from home that is quite easy to set up? Oh, maybe I'll look at VoiceOver. And suddenly there was a big influx of people into the market. And of course, at that particular time, all the actors who were suddenly out of work because all the theatres closed thought, what else can I do? I know I can do voice acting. I can do it from home. And so there were a lot of new people entering the marketplace at that time. And I think, there are a lot of people chasing the same jobs.
Yeah, it must be tough.
What about accents? Because you have a very neutral accent. What about accents? Because I couldn't do voiceover work because, I have a South African accent.
Well, you could, because there are voiceovers for every kind of accent. And, people often say to me, do you do accents? And the answer is no, not really. Because usually when a client wants an accent, they want it to be genuine. They don't want me putting on a version of a Liverpudlian accent or an American accent, for example. It depends a little bit on what sort of field of voiceover you work in. So for people who are audiobook narrators, they might need to put on accents to differentiate their characters. Or people who work in video games might be asked to voice several characters, and of course they've got to make them all different. But for the kind, I tend to do more corporate work, so a lot of the e-learning, a lot of corporate videos. And if people want accents for that, they want it to be a genuine accent. I have occasionally been asked to do things. I had a client quite recently who was an American client and had hired me because I have a British accent, but then decided actually what he wanted was kind of a mishmash of the British and American accent. He said, can you put on an American accent? And I said, well, I will if you won't laugh at me. So I put on my best general American accent, and that was what he wanted. But it's not something that I would advertise that I do, really.
I thought the Americans must have loved you because they love the British accent, don't they? Especially when you sound nice, they just go wild for it. So you must have been quite in demand.
They do. And I remember going to, visiting places. I remember going to a museum in particular and going to buy my ticket. And then the lady behind the counter was like, oh, just talk to me. Just say anything. I just love your accent.
Well, let's listen to what you doing some of this work.
This autumn, Mothercare has all the essentials, from sleep suits and bodysuits to hats and mittens. Envelope necks for easy changing, enclosed seams to avoid loose threads. The new Fiat 500 Pop, accessorised for London, Paris and New York. The Fiat 500, the pleasure of driving. Sometimes it's nice to get out of the city and visit places where light and shapes are created by nature itself. I always take my camera to the beach. Discover a different way to cleanse. Remove makeup gently. Healthy skincare is now Skin Active. From Garnier. This is Greg. Greg owns his own plumbing company and has 8 vans, all of which are different brands, all over 5 years old, and all recently out of service contract. Information is the lifeblood of our organisation. We all have a responsibility to ensure its confidentiality and integrity. We save children's lives. We fight for their rights. We help them fulfil their potential. Haribo is the leading gums and jellies brand. Mawam is number 2 in its category. In a year when customer spend has declined, both brands are continuing to expand. The field has become the hub for the entire village. Now it's not only used for sporting fixtures, but also for evening markets, community gatherings, and even school plays. Manchester, the city where industry began, where dreams are realised, where the future is made.
So that was the extraordinary vocal talent that is Liz Drury, voiceover. Liz, tell us a bit more about some of the clients that you've worked with.
All sorts of people, really, from from one-man bands right through to multinational companies. But some of the well-known businesses that people would have heard of, JCB springs to mind. So I am the voice of the health and safety video that people have to watch if they're doing the JCB factory tour before they're actually allowed on the factory floor. One of my favorite ones.
Brilliant. I love it.
How do you get clients? Because you freelance, so obviously you're running your own business. So how do you actually acquire clients and paying clients?
Yeah, I get asked that question quite a lot, and a number of sources, really. So I have my own website, of course, and people do find me through my website. They're not loads. I do a lot of networking. That definitely helps. And as you ladies know, it's not all necessarily about the people that you meet in the networking room. It's about the people that they know. And I do find that I get a lot of referrals from people that I've met through networking meetings. And I do a lot of outreach, just cold emails to companies that I would like to work with, and introduce myself. And I think the secret there is a lot of people give up after the first email if they don't get a response. But people are busy. It's not that they didn't want to respond to you a lot of the time. It's just that they thought, oh, I'll deal with that later. And then 10 other emails come in. So I always follow up, and I follow up to 5 times with people. And it's surprising the number of people who will come back to me after the 4th or 5th email and say, oh, thanks for keeping in touch with us. Sorry we haven't replied, just been busy, but here we are. Now we've got something for you to do. So that definitely works. And I'm now in the fortunate position where I have a lot of clients who come back to me. So, a lot of repeat business, and social media too, particularly LinkedIn. Because the genres of voiceover that I work in are very much business based. LinkedIn has worked quite well for me too.
Yeah, I think that is a key piece of advice is the fortunes in the follow-up, because these days you send one email and you're absolutely right, it gets lost. It gets lost, and it may not even be seen, and even if it is seen, and I've done it myself, I'm guilty of it. Oh yeah, I'll deal with that in 5 minutes, and then 2 weeks later I think, oh my god, I still haven't responded to that. So yeah, just keep on. And I think that being English as well, there's a certain, or how often is too often, I don't want to keep, they might think I'm nagging them, or but these days in social media the world moves so fast that you have to keep putting yourself forward, don't you? And it's not rude anymore.
That's right. You've got to somehow stay top of mind with people.
Absolutely.
So have you got any top tips for people who wish to follow in your footsteps and become a freelance voiceover artist?
I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give is to get some training. Because like me at the start of my journey, I didn't know what kind of voiceover was going to suit me. I didn't really know what opportunities were out there, and how to make the best use of my voice. So I always say to people, get some training, and get some training before you make your voiceover demos, because it's not a cheap thing to do to have professional demos make, and you want to make sure that those are going to be the best they can be, because that's like your calling card. It's like your shop window of what you can do, and you don't want to do that before you're ready. So I always say to people, training first, then do your demos, and then you can start reaching out to potential clients.
Very good.
And setting yourself up at home with a home studio, what kind of advice would you give for that?
Yeah, so the main thing to remember is that however expensive the microphone is, it won't sound that great unless you've got a good environment in which to record. So it doesn't necessarily need to be something like the booth I've got behind me, but you need to create somewhere in your home that is as quiet as it possibly can be. You can maybe use acoustic blankets set up over a plastic frame or something to get started. But the better you can make the environment, the better. And it's pointless investing in a massively expensive microphone until you've worked on your space and made it, treated it acoustically and made it as soundproof as you possibly can.
We have several, you amongst them, voiceover artists as members of Creatives. And I can't remember who it was now, who said that their first sound booth, they tipped over a sofa and they put duvets on it and huddled underneath the sofa before I think it was Simon Wells, before he could afford a proper sound booth. So yeah, needs must when the devil drives.
Yeah, and my first recording studio when we were living in the States was a walk-in wardrobe. It was quite a big walk-in wardrobe, but all the clothes helped with the sound absorption, so that was quite a good space. But I don't have a walk-in wardrobe in my home here in North Lincolnshire, so that was the point at which I knew I had to invest in something better.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you don't necessarily think, because you can't see it, you don't necessarily think of sound waves that are actually pinging off everywhere, and you have to kind of stop it.
Them out.
Because if you don't, it's like, whoa, it's like ping like in a microwave, and it's it just blows my mind. But you can really tell the difference, can't you, when you have an echoey room or someone who's got a professional setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what would be your third tip?
My third tip, well, I think it probably comes back to the marketing. As a freelancer, nobody's going to do that for you. You have got to get out of your own way and get over yourself and just put yourself out there, however uncomfortable it might feel. With it, I always recommend networking to people. I think it's one of the best things that I do for my business. And a lot of people think, oh no, I don't want to walk into a room of strangers, and I don't want to talk to people, and who's going to be interested in talking to me? But I think in voiceover artists have got such an interesting career. People always want to know about it. So I think people have got nothing to be scared of when walking into a networking meeting, because everyone's going to be interested in what you do. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, everyone's got a story as well, haven't they? As you say, your background is very different to what you do now, but it's a lovely story to know how you came from one to the other. And a lot of the voiceover artists that we've spoken to, did completely different things. They didn't leave school thinking, oh, I'm going to be a voiceover artist.
No.
They all did something completely different. So I think it's really lovely that, you found a career that suits you and has ignited your passion.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could go back and work for somebody else anymore. I value my freedom too much now, and being able to work when I want and do what I want.
How do people get hold? Oh, sorry, Melanie.
I was just going to say, how do you cope being in a booth, though? We've had this before, but when it's really hot, like we're having a bit of a warm spell and you can't have a fan in there, can you, because of the noise? So how do you survive it?
No, you can't. Well, you have to keep your fingers crossed that you don't get a long project when it's a really hot week. But apart from that, just have to keep stopping every 10 minutes and opening the door and wafting some air in. There's not much else I can do. On the flip side, in the winter, it's lovely.
Nice and cozy. So how do people get hold of you if they like your voice and they want your voice on their telephone machines or adverts or anything? How do they get hold of you?
So probably the best and the easiest way to find me is through my website, which is lizdrury.co.uk, and all my contact details are on there.
And what socials are you on, Liz, if people want to give you a follow on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or whatever? Tell us what you're on.
The one that I'm most active on is LinkedIn. I also post quite regularly on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I'm a bit hit and miss on Instagram, to be honest. Twitter, and I've just joined Threads as well.
Oh yeah,
so, the new one. I'm on there too, but I'm not on TikTok as yet.
Yeah, I've done 2 Threads so far. I keep forgetting about it.
Yeah,
so much. It's like I thought, oh well, I got to do it because it's new, but then it's just like, oh god, it's just another thing to keep up with.
Well, you can come off Twitter then, because everybody seems to be, once Threads is up and running, because they're adding in all the bits. Still, you can come off Twitter and stay on Threads then. So Liz, Melanie is shuffling her cards, and this is when we ask you weird questions, or at least she does. So there's no right or wrong answer. She'll ask you to pick a card, and then we'll talk about it.
Right.
This is the on the couch part of On the Couch. We're going to delve into your psyche.
Well, I'm comfortably lying down, relaxed.
Not that bad.
Yeah, so there's nothing to worry about. Just whatever the first thing comes into your head. Okay, I'm going to run my finger along the card. You tell me to stop when you want me to stop.
Stop.
Ooh. Okay, what did you pick? You picked. Ooh. Very good one for self-employed people. You picked efficiency.
All right.
And as we're all creative people here, we're going to ask you creatively about efficiency. So, Liz, efficiency. What does efficiency mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
Okay, efficiency. So I think efficiency is getting done all those things that you said you were going to do in the day, in the time you said you would do them, getting, ticking everything off that to-do list, which I don't know about you two, but I hardly ever get to the end of that to-do list.
I was just listening to you thinking, yeah, epic fail.
But if I was really efficient, I would be, ticking that last thing off at 5 to 5 and, closing my computer down for the day. But that rarely happens, I have to say. And I think when you're, creative freelancers like we are, you end up being quite reactive to what comes in. Doesn't matter how well you've planned your day, a client can email you and say, oh, can you do this today? And then suddenly everything changes, doesn't it? Because you're not going to say, no, I can't do that because I was going to write my blog post today. You're going to take the paid work, aren't you? So yeah. I think it's great to plan to be efficient, but you also have to be quite flexible in our game, I think.
Yeah. What does it sound like being a voiceover lady? If it had a sound, what would it be?
It would sound like a perfect take every time with no editing to do.
God, wouldn't that be marvelous?
Yes.
I like my idea that, that'd be heaven. Just let it roll, doesn't need anything doing to it. That'd be my idea of heaven.
Yeah,
what does it smell like? What does it smell like?
What's it smell like? Oh, I think it smells like the roses that are growing down the side of my house because I've been really efficient. Then I've got time to go out and walk my dog. And I walk past those roses on the way down the drive.
I like that. I can't smell anything at the moment because I'm bunged up. But, when I get my sense of smell back, I'm going to go and smell some roses.
Liz, it's been lovely having you on the couch. It's been wonderful talking to you. And thanks so much for giving us your time.
Thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to Julie, my co-host, and thank you to the viewers for tuning in today as well. But that's all we've got time for. So until next time, we'll see you.